live. The Element Wealth studio has been relocated today to the Biloxi Green on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast for the 27th annual Cruisin the Coast. We are pleased to welcome to the program now Sir Devon of the Molly Ringwalds. Sir Devon, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So the first question I got to ask you is, where'd you get the name Molly Ringwalds as the name of the band, of the group?
That happened about 24 years ago. Actually, we're having lunch with some chaps of ours, and we're thinking about doing this 80s band and playing old MTV hits and things like that. We were just throwing things around, and a friend across the table said, "What about the Molly Ringwalds?" And we were like, "Check, please." That's good
awesome.
enough. It was that easy.
That is great.
Yeah.
So you are the band's lead singer and also guitarist, right?
Well, I'm most handsome is what they really call me.
I love it. Okay.
But yeah, I do most of the singing, but we all sing, we all play different instruments. We kind of trade off and stuff, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So mostly cover stuff from that era, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we call ourselves a rock and roll band because that's kind of what we do, but yeah, it's the old songs from the MTV era, from the early 80s to the late 80s. So yeah, it's a good combination of all that great stuff that we miss a bunch.
Yeah. You mean when music, television, TV was actually aired music videos?
That was the concept, wasn't it?
It was.
It's crazy.
Invented by a Mississippian, you know. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, the founder of MTV is from the state of Mississippi.
Get
Absolutely.
out of here. That's that's a good trivia question.
Yes, it is.
I would think New York or something like that.
I know. I think, Rhino, was it Brookhaven? Is that right? The founders, I recall, of MTV.
Oh, that's great.
Hails from Brookhaven is what I remember. Lincoln County, maybe. But
okay.
You're here because you guys are going to be performing at the Beau Rivage, right?
We are. Cruisin the Coast. This is maybe our 6th or 7th year doing this. And tonight we're at the Beau Rivage. We start for 7:30. Tickets are $20. And there's going to be some meet and greet with some of the major kind of, I guess, car personnel that y'all have here, or something like that, right? The big giants of the Cruisin the Coast.
Yeah.
Not the band, I guess. I guess they didn't want the band meet and greet. They just wanted the car people. But that's
All right.
okay.
Well, here's what I got to know, Sir Devon. Can you share with us any cuts from the set lists? Can you tell us about that?
I haven't worked on it yet, but it's going to be 80s tunes, that's for sure. That's for sure. No, it really, we kind of look back the last time we played the area, and I don't really know when that is. I have to get with our staff to find out what we did. And we won't repeat those songs probably, so it'll be a totally different show. But, it's going to be, there might be Under Pressure by David Bowie, Queen. Maybe, you can't get out the door alive if you don't play a Journey song.
Of course,
so
that's my favorite, by the way.
I love Journey. So there's probably going to be a song by those guys. There might be some Duran Duran, In Excess.
Okay.
Tons.
Maybe it's 70s, but I'm thinking Foreigner, Boston, Styx, any of those guys?
So we do a Foreigner song because they crossed over into the 80s. We do Urgent, but we do Jukebox Hero pretty often.
Oh, that's awesome.
So if you're in the show, we'll do it tonight.
That is awesome. Okay. Yeah. And so you've got, I looked at your website, you've got quite the busy tour.
We're very busy. It's, since COVID, we've been rocking and rolling all over the country. And, it's great. We were just in Oxford, Mississippi last week, Dallas, Texas. We're here in the lovely confines of Biloxi, Mississippi. Yep. So, it's all over the country, and we're going to have a really good, busy schedule for the rest of the year.
So when you're covering these classic 80s groups like this, Sir Devon, do you study videos or just listen consistently to their tunes to try to get the look and feel?
Yeah, we try and keep it as close to the original as possible. We don't really like to stray because I don't think the art, like we would never do Don't Stop Believing as a jazz tune. I don't think the audience wants that. So we pretty much kind of stick to the way it was written. Maybe a couple little things, but we try and do as close to the record as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be difficult when you're trying to emulate someone else as opposed to being yourself, or do you kind of integrate the two?
We integrate the two for sure. It's the band, excluding myself, is they're pretty good musicians. They're actually better than good.
Of course.
So it's not. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it comes rather natural for the guys to kind of pick up on these tunes.
Okay.
You know, when we go and record them for an album, then it gets a little bit tricky because you're like, oh, there's this part that we didn't play, or there's this harmony over here that we totally forgot about.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good both ways.
Well, and also this is back in the pre-auto-tune days as well, right?
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the raw sound. From
Absolutely, absolutely. It's live.
That's just incredible. Do you think MTV, VH1, I guess, was kind of a comer after that? Do you think maybe they'll return to those days of playing constant music videos? There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in that, does it?
I think you said it right there. I just don't think the kids today are into that. You know, they're into their phones and their computers, and they can find it on those resources as well. But man, I think about it constantly, how much the kids today are missing out.
I agree. Well, and if for nothing else, because in our day, in the 80s, for example, you'd hear these tunes and you loved them on the radio, or perhaps you had the albums, you know, the LPs. But, man, all of a sudden you could see them on these videos, the artists themselves, you
Absolutely.
know, in person performing. And it was and the video producers would get pretty creative with all that stuff.
They actually would. You know, I mean, without MTV, VH1, we probably wouldn't have heard of Kaja Gugu. We might not have heard of Duran Duran or In Excess being from Australia, because there wasn't much of that on the American radio at that time.
That's true.
There was some, you know, Lonesome Loser.
Yeah.
I can't think of the Australian band. The Little River Band.
Little River Band, yeah.
They
Lonesome
kind of
Loser.
made it, but there wasn't that much, you know. But today's radio, they play maybe 10 artists.
Yeah.
And MTV, you would get 20 bands or 20 artists between 11 and 12 midnight.
Yeah. But, you know, here's what I found, though. When you introduce that music to the younger generations, they fall in love with it.
Absolutely.
They fall in love with it.
Absolutely love it. We have a very young following. A lot of the fans who come to our shows always ask us when will we be doing it all ages, because they want to bring their kids to it.
Yeah.
And we look in the audience, and the kids know the words to Jesse's Girl better than me.
Rick Springfield.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Who hosts a show on Sirius FM.
He does. I listen to
Sirius XM.
Sirius XM,
the
yeah.
80s channel.
He does. He does, yeah. He's great. He's, you know, I'm very happy for someone like him, because he's a real artist, you know, great guitar player, writes most of his own tunes, great guy, great performer. And he's been doing this. He's lasted from the late 70s he had a hit in America before Jesse's Girl. But I'm glad artists like him are still around today performing their work. Because
Well, that's a good point, because these were really musicians playing this music. Toto is one of my favorites, for example. How about that lineup of musicians?
The all-stars of musicians,
Incredible.
for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Probably combined could be heard on more songs that you didn't even know they played on in the studio, right?
Exactly.
The drummer, Jeff Porcaro. Man, he did 1 million records.
Steve Lukather, if I'm
Lukather, the
pronouncing
lead
his name right, written so many
Unbelievable.
songs from Lionel Richie to George Benson, you know, played guitar, not the solo, but played the guitar on Beat It, and so many other songs. So yeah, that band is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is
travesty.
But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sucks anyway.
It's a travesty. REO Speedwagon, one of my favorites, not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Love him.
Right? If I'm not mistaken, Dan Fogelberg's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Dan Fogelberg what a great American songwriter he is, huh?
Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
These were true musicians, though. That's the point. I mean, they played music. They created music.
You know, we
not just acted it. You know what I'm saying? Like in the '60s, maybe that was more acting than anything else. So
you know, I think each decade had their moment. You know, I think the last great moment was the '90s. There were some fantastic bands who came from the '90s, and then after that, and maybe it's just myself who doesn't get into it anymore. That there are some great artists out there.
Yeah.
They're not on radio.
Yeah.
It's just so formatted that it's just not there anymore. But if you research Spotify or you go on YouTube, there's so many great bands out there.
Yeah.
They're just not being heard anymore,
That's true.
unfortunately.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We don't. Well, back then, you know, you had a limited number of sources, of outlets for it, and everybody tuned into that to see what was going on. But I think it's cool that you're keeping that category, that era alive, because I'd maybe go down as the best ever in our history from a rock and roll perspective.
Arguably, for sure. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's someone who's a lot older than me would say that the 60s were better. I mean, my favorite band is the Beatles, so I'm not going to argue with that.
Can't argue with that.
But I love the Bee Gees in the 70s, and I love Hall & Oates, and I love Queen and all those bands through the 70s. I'm an 80s guy because it's in me DNA.
Yeah.
But I'm also a 90s fan, too. So I think those are the four great decades. And the 50s had their moments as well.
I agree. Sir Devon with the Molly Ringwalds has been our guest, playing at the Beau Rivage, right?
Playing at the Beau Rivage. Tickets are $20. The band starts at 7:30. We're in the big room. There'll be a meet and greet for some of the more important car personnel here.
Sounds great.
And thanks for having me. This is great.
Appreciate you coming on. We're coming right back, folks. We're at Cruisin the Coast.